I'm Sarah.
And I'm Georgie. Welcome back to the Hope & Co studio and our latest studio exchange.
Okay, so it's been a busy couple of weeks in the studio and we've been doing and juggling all sorts of things. We did reach out to the Instagram community last week and asked for some questions for us to discuss this week, and we got back some really lovely sort of points of interest for us to talk about. So the first question we were asked last week was, what are the best and worst things about working together? What are the best and worst things? Good question. Great question, because I know Georgie and I have worked together for a long time, but we've worked together really closely, and we've worked out that our routine is best if we shift and move that dynamic and create space for each other, as well as those close times together. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I agree, because I think that when we were starting out, we were in here every day. Sometimes we were in here 7 days a week, which was a lot. And we've often had this conversation about, and this doesn't matter whether you're working with your mum or whether you might work with your husband, I'm looking off camera at my husband, or whether you work with a best friend or anyone like that. Ultimately, like, if you work in close proximity with anybody for a really extended period of time without sort of reprieve, you're going to find that, I mean, whether it's tensions flare, no, not necessarily anything like that, but just that naturally, like, you get very tired, and everyone, I think especially women, are very cyclical beings, and that, especially because we're so creative, we rotate through different creative things, so we need to make space for that, hold space for that. And there's definitely also been days where, you know, like, I think there was a day, I don't know, a month ago or so, where I just wasn't having a good start to the day, and mum really held space for that and was like, don't worry about coming down, just, you know, go and take a personal morning and things, and just really kind of listening to each other and what we need. And sometimes I'll call mum and, you know, and sort of, we joke about this, but I know in like the first 30 seconds what sort of state mum's in that day, and so I might be like, do you actually just want some alone studio time?
Well, this is a really good point George is making, that there are some days when George will ring and say, and she'll just kind of gather that I need a bit of studio time, so she will actually ring and say, do you want to be painting on your own or doing some stuff on your own down at the studio? And I'll say, yeah, I will actually do that for this morning, and we'll catch up at lunchtime instead. I think the best thing about working together is that we know each other so well.
Yes.
And probably the worst thing is that we know each other so well.
Yeah.
I think that really, when you're mother and daughter too, there's that dynamic, and Georgie's often said is the crossover between, we share pretty much everything, and so the mother and daughter dynamic can sometimes be almost too close. And but generally speaking, we get along really well as mates, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And we're very similar in lots of ways, but there are differences, and we understand those differences, I think and respect them.
Sorry, yeah, I think that's one of the blessings of knowing someone so well, is that, I mean, in lots of ways, apart from perhaps like your spouse or something, no one knows you better than your mum or your dad, you know. So I think that we're very fortunate in that way, that we are, you know, very close, and that we can also sense where the other is at on a particular day. So I think that's because I think the word worst is like, has such a negative connotation around it. Totally get, you know, what that means, but I don't think there's ever really a worse thing. And I think that we've also just obviously matured in the business over time and working together, even comparatively to when we first started this channel, you know, nearly 6 years ago now, or I think it was about 6 years ago, that we have learnt a lot since then in terms of our working patterns, as we've talked about, but also the fact that we, I think, have just, as creatives, really come into our own as well, and we really play into each other's strengths. That's one of the best things too. Like, we know that mum is an amazing strategist and problem solver and great with ideas and things, and, you know, I've got other aspects like photography and marketing and things, and Horvath, who's behind the camera, is obviously the marketing whiz, he's the video whiz, and all of that, and obviously we all have lots of other skills. I'm not grocery listing, but essentially we all know now how to play into each other's strengths, and that's one of the best things about working together too, is recognizing what is each of our zones of genius too, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah, and I think that we've got so much in common in terms of our interests, and they just sort of mesh in together and intertwine rather than being laid over one another.
Yes.
So, and as we've talked about in our earlier studio exchanges, where Georgie's photography was born from actually taking photos and understanding that we couldn't quite afford to outsource photography at that point, and so we upskilled. And I think we're constantly, because we know each other so well, the best part about it is that we're constantly upskilling. So I might be having a vision about what I want, and Georgie will say, and she'll just picture it. It's sort of like having the vision, but I couldn't translate that to photos. She can, and so basically she films my brain.
Just as sometimes
she adjusts my
Just as you sometimes are able to articulate or write things, or the way that you style the studio. And that is really, and sometimes I'll come in and be like, oh, are you moving things around again? But then the way that Mum moves it around again makes you think, oh, we should have been like that all along. Like, she knew exactly what she was doing. Like, we just leave Mum to her styling as well, and to also envisioning sort of ranges and things. Like, when we used to work in the studio a number of years ago, we would try and work like big corporates do and work out a specific range and specific colours. But Mum's strength is obviously the element of creativity itself and designing new ranges and new ideas and things. So it's also just like holding space for you to go and be completely creative and design whatever you want, or whatever pattern you've decided to come up with. It's like that's also playing into your strength as well. And
I think my husband often says, "You're what? You're what?" He's very patient, is Pete.
Yes.
But I also think that whole concept of understanding each other is probably best described by just knowing that we're unusual in many ways, in that we can work together, and a lot of people have said to us, "You're so lucky that you can work with your daughter. You're so lucky you can work with your mum." And so at the end of the day, we are very fortunate that we can work together. And I was going to say, I don't think that there's a worst.
No, I don't think there is.
No.
I don't think there is either.
Yeah.
I don't think there is either. And I think that we've got a really good sense of working together, and then, and then I can also go up to Mum's at the end of a day for a drink, and Mum is Mum, and it's not about work, it's just about, being family too. So that's an absolute blessing as well.
Well, it's a bit like we try and switch off. It's a bit like my brothers who are in real estate and who I love dearly, and often the conversations will lend themselves to real estate. And so certainly that's not all they talk about, obviously, but I know that it's very easy to talk shop when you're in a family or a social situation, so we need to try and switch off. So on that note, we've changed scenes. If you've watched the first two videos, we're in actually another space today. And so this is our little shop space, and no doubt we'll do a little bit of B-roll so that you can see a little bit of the shop. It's also the space where we have our open studios, where people can come in and purchase. We're not actually open every day. I couldn't handle that. I really like the studio space to ourselves, and that's the other thing, is that it is our working space, so therefore it's open by appointment at the moment. But we'll show you a little bit of our studio as we move through these studio exchanges. That's all part of it. And so for the next question, we're going to be in another space in the studio. So hi, we've just moved into the pottery studio for you today, and the reason why we've come in here, it actually isn't quite finished. I've still got mess everywhere, and Georgie knows I move things around. I'm just trying to work out the best way to have this. To have the configuration. We've got a lot of moulds over there in the corner, which we'll show you, and also a slip casting area. This is our slab roller, our Bailey's slab roller, which was an amazing find considering it's American, and we found one here virtually unused.
Featured quite heavily in all of our original vlogs.
And it's amazing. But essentially we're trying to get a flow of work so that we've got two roller doors at the front of the pottery studio, as this was originally a garage. And the idea is that the heavier things, whether it be clay being delivered or whatever, are able to be brought in, and we don't have to carry them very far. And the slip casting comes around in the slab, and basically we're trying to work it this way out to the kiln, which is only just here, so it's not very far. But any given week, the next question that we were going to approach was...
It's on your phone.
Yeah, it's on my phone. But was essentially, how do you lay out your creative day or your creative week? Agenda for the week. So this week, for instance, has been a bit of a mix. It always is. But I've started slip casting again, which has been exciting. And we're also choosing our colour for our range later this year. And we always go by colour trends, but I essentially have in the past almost been, well, for want of a better word, ahead. So people, for instance, I was sort of doing yellow and things like that
4 years ago.
Yeah. And so I'm mindful I've got to try and stay within the range of what people are looking for now, otherwise things don't sell. And people love... change every year, and even if it's tonal changes, so it might be, for instance, a more peacocky sort of greeny blue this year that's really in it. The colour of the year, the Pantone colour of the year is
also garden colours are very much in as well. Like earthy colours are always probably in to a degree. Like there's always a form of blue or navy that's a trend. It's just whatever shade that is for that particular year.
I've tried to do sort of really earthy colours. They're not really me, are they? I just generally think that I love colour, but I also love subtle colour in its place, but I love blues, I love greens, I love pinks. But one of these days I'll try and love purple, but I'm just not a purple person. I'm sorry, those purple...
Lilac is probably the closest. I think we've got one here that's lilac.
Yeah, but I might actually succumb and do a tiny bit of lilac.
Which could be really gentle and beautiful for winter.
Isn't it? It's more blue than purple. I just don't do that really strong purple. I don't know. Do you grow up as a girl and you're either a pink or a purple girl? I was definitely a pink girl.
Yes.
And so was Georgie.
Because purple was illegal in our house.
But I know, I had a real phobia about purple,
Aversion.
I don't know what it is, but...
I suppose like this week we've been looking at our long-range forecast for what's going on this year. So we are, for the first time, going and doing some big sort of events. We've got a big... I wouldn't really refer to it as a market because it's more like a big, huge...
Well, it's a regional show, and it's probably the best description.
And it gets, for us, just for perspective...
Like a county show?
Because we're in Australia and our population is a lot smaller. We're looking at I think it's 10 to 15,000 people come through the gate every day at this particular show. So it's a really big event. It's a huge draw card, and that's part of what we have been planning and designing this week, because that's in August. And it's now late April as we're filming this. So we need to be creating, that's why Mum started slip casting, but we're actually now planning and creating stock for that specific event, because we mentioned in the last one that we do have a surplus of old stock as well, but we do need to obviously consciously design product that's going to meet the market where they're at now and what colours and things are in trend. So one of Mum's comments yesterday, you were aghast because I said to her that 90s colours are really in, the whole Nancy Myers thing, and Mum just had PTSD.
I did, not because I didn't love them at the time, but they so remind me of the early 90s, these two colours. But it's a bit like speaking to my mum, who's just a very, very elegant 80-year-old, and she said to me a while back when wide leg pants came back in, I mean, she's really groovy, my mum, but for a moment there I think she thought, oh my god, that's the 70s coming back, and she couldn't quite deal with it. Or something for me, the similar thing would be the 80s, where shoulder pads. I mean, I've got quite broad shoulders, so I don't hate them, and kind of that really strong makeup and things like that came, anything like that from your past can sometimes jar, because you don't want to go back there. But that said, there are some really, I mean, Nancy Myers she's amazing, and I love her interiors. But how do you interpret all those colour trends within your creative sort of universe or repertoire, so that it sits well with you and it's new and fresh based on something that everyone's loved before?
Yeah, and also making sure, I think one of the biggest creative things I suppose that people struggle with is wanting to subscribe to trends, but then wanting their work to still be unique. And that's why for us, we always talk about taking inspiration. So what we've essentially done with some of these colours here is we've gone through trend lookbooks, we have gone through Paris and London Fashion Week and looked at
you know, even upwards of 2027 trends, and we look at all those colors and what people are responding to, and then we come back to that ourselves and we say, okay, like out of all of these colors here, what are the ones that actually speak to us? So you can see a whole lot of trending colors here, even if it doesn't look like it on the camera. But we still have to go through now and essentially micro select which ones actually suit our brand. And I think that that's a huge point of emphasis.
And the
brands.
other thing to take on is that generally colour trends come come through fashion first, and then it filters down
to everything.
So it's a bit like the top of the pyramid, and it filters down into from fashion to interiors to homewares, and then eventually to stores. There's sometimes 3 or 4 years, or retail brands that copy what has been up the top. Generally, that can filter down even into your cheaper stores.
There's an iconic Devil Wears Prada scene where Meryl Streep explains, you know, essentially that like this is it cerulean blue or something?
Cerulean blue.
Yeah, and she sort of says, oh, like you think that you've like selected that sweater for yourself, and you think that you're going against the fashion industry by buying this, you know, whatever it is, $20 jumper from a standard retailer. And yet she said that colour was, you know, huge in Fashion Week a year or two before, essentially. And then it trickled down to, you know, the mid-range, and then it trickled down to all of the regular department stores and things. And that is essentially how the system works, especially with things creatively and things like colour. And that's why it was so interesting for us, because you were so ahead of things. So we were doing gingham and everything back in 2019. And we were doing, you know, spots and bringing those sorts of high colour things. I think we might have talked about this a little bit last week, because we talk about this mostly in that podcast episode we noted, where essentially we've always been ahead of trends. But that said, it's quite interesting, like navigating being ahead of trends and then meeting people with where they're at and what they want to purchase.
And that's what I was saying earlier. So anyway, so this is an extremely sort of, well, believe it or not, there's a lot of planning that goes into the colours and how to you know, match those with forms. And so essentially I've got a whole lot of new colours that we haven't even tested. So we generally have chips. So this might be easier to see on camera, but a chip that's leftover clay, we put a hole in it, and we are going to put them all up on the wall.
Or even strips of scrap clay as well. Yeah.
And so essentially it gives us an indication. We can play around. It's a bit like our little ceramics version of Mahjong. So we have these little porcelain chips. So that hopefully will give you, that's been our focus this week, is actually some making and some more filming and choosing our colours for the next few months.
All right, we are back in the shop, and our next question is, drum roll,
do you have a specific piece of art you have created that is most special to you? That question was from Mel. Thanks, Mel. I guess yes and no. I do have some pieces that I hang at home that I couldn't quite part with, and are quite sort of, in my mind, older now, and I feel my art has definitely improved since I painted those. But I guess my favourite and most special piece is normally the pieces I've just completed, and I fall in love with those, and I live with them for a little while. And for instance, we're about to launch a new collection probably in a month or two. By the time I've finished a range of works that are sort of linked thematically to the landscape that I'm painting. And I suppose the ones that I love the most are the most recent, and at least I get to live with them for a little while before they're sold. I suppose that's how I feel, and I suppose that's why I am comfortable delaying the sale until the collection is complete, because if I sell them straight away, and then I don't get to enjoy them myself. But by the time they are sold, I'm working on new things, and I'm excited by that.
There are definitely, I know that we've had, in terms of ceramics especially, we've absolutely had pieces over the years that, and there was even maybe a couple of paintings in here, I felt this too, but there were definitely some ceramics that we almost grieved when they left, where like I remember there was a beautiful glaze that you had, was a celadon glaze.
Yeah,
there wasn't much.
There was only a little bit of it, and the thing was, when I bought our first kiln, well actually no, it was our second kiln, so we've sort of got bigger and bigger as we've gone along. And when I bought the second kiln, it was a second-hand kiln. It came with a heap of vintage moulds, and it came with a heap of underglazes and glazes, and it was just in boxes and baskets. And I had a spare bulb vase, and I thought, look, I'm just going to wing it and I'll try this Celadon glaze, and there wasn't much of it, and it was the most stunning glaze. I don't even know.
You did it on a jug too. We had a jug.
I did it on a jug as well, and that's all I had. I'll see if we can find the photos for you to show you.
We'll put them. And we had
put them up.
We had an open studio, and you were out. And I remember texting you and saying, you know, there was a lady who wanted to buy it. We hadn't priced it because it wasn't for sale, but she really wanted it. I think she might have even bought both of them. I think she might have bought the bulb vase, and she bought the jug.
Anyway, I was really sad.
She was really sad, and I remember
really
Mum
sad.
saying, you know, she set back the price, and she said, "Oh, okay." Like, but when she came back, Mum almost cried. She was like, "That's the one piece she didn't want to."
Yeah, I just should have kept it. I just should have kept it, and because generally I keep the pieces that have cracks in them that I can't sell, and I know that that's bad feng shui, so we should probably just ditch them. But I always feel that the pieces have a story. I want to train myself in kintsugi, which is the Japanese technique of putting melted, well, sort of a gold. What am I trying to find the word for?
You fuse it. You essentially fuse and repair ceramic pieces with gold.
With gold, and that's much better put than me.
So you share a brain cell.
But that way, you know, the pieces then have a history. So yes, there have been some favourite pieces, and some of them very hard to part with. But that's the beauty of being able to create something new and inspiring each time we create.
I also think there's another artist friend that we've spoken to about this, and she has made a point of like pieces that she really loves that she wants to keep, because she said the interesting thing is that, you know, obviously when your art has value, especially if it has collector value, that then you and even your kids don't end up having pieces of art, you know, that are really special, or having their own collection. Like everyone else has your art, but then you don't. So I think that we have also been a bit more conscious this time about, especially when we're making ceramics or paintings and things, is actually noticing when something's really important to us and really special to us, and that sometimes not all things have to be sold. And I think we got into a habit, as you said last time, of always taking home the imperfect pieces and the broken pieces. But those sorts of things where you look at them and you think, oh, I really want that, that's a really nice piece, and you forget that you can actually make it for yourself.
It's not like you've seen it in a shop and it's gone forever.
Exactly. Like, but then sometimes because things are one-off for us as well, I've definitely felt like there have been some things that have gone, and I've been sad about them going, because you know that they're unique. So that's probably a really important point, I think, generally for most artists too, is that you might have a favourite piece as well, and if it really is your favourite piece ever, or it's so special to you, then you don't have to sell everything. I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. And part of the reason why we create is because we're creating for ourselves first. And that's something that I've worked out a long time ago, was that the beauty of being an artist rather than a merchant, pure and simple in a retail space, is that you're creating pieces that you love, and I think that love is in those pieces, so other people do want them. And but essentially, I'm not creating for anyone else to start with. I'm obviously, I you know, if you're selling things, you want to keep your customer in mind and think, I think this demographic will love this piece, and this will really resonate with other people. But essentially, I've got to be happy with it myself.
And I think that's one of your key principles too, is that we always try and create pieces, and this has been Mum's whole overarching thing with Hope & Co art generally, is that it has to be pieces that people love to live with. Like, it has to be things that people can imagine in their homes, because there's the aspect of, obviously all of them are an expression of our soul and our energy. And I remember gifting a piece of ceramics to a really dear friend of mine, and she was holding on to it at this tray, and I remember her saying, this is just so beautiful because I can just feel your energy in this. I can feel, you know, part of you having made this with your hands and how special it is. And, you know, and I think that it's a sort of a two-pronged thing in terms of, you know, you want to create those pieces that people love to live with in their houses, pieces that we would live with in our houses, and then also pieces that are special because we've put a part of ourselves into every piece that we make.
I'm going to illustrate something with that. So this piece hasn't been, I'm just testing these out to create wall hangings. And in fact, I haven't created a wall hanging on the back. I want to see how it fired. But each of these petals has been moulded in my hand, in the palm of my hand. And I just think that sometimes you just can't replicate that. So that's what I find so special about handmade. And each of these tiny little, the stamen was obviously created, and all of these little balls were made in the ball of my hand as well. So I think it's really important to recognise that handmade is something quite unique, and that's why we've probably geared ourselves towards one-off pieces. I've just been slip casting, which we've just shown you in the last segment, and I've started slip casting some pieces that I haven't slip cast for a while, and I just got so excited. It was like, hello old friend. And I'm really excited to be doing some pieces again, but interpreted differently with glazes and different finishes this time. So I can't wait to show you those in another studio exchange when we finish, but we'll obviously do that in due course.
Okay, so Mum, do you have a muse or muses, if that's the plural of muse? Thanks.
Right, okay, that message was from Paul, I think. Thanks, Paul, for the question. I think a muse is often associated with painters who paint portraits, and have maybe a male painter who has a female muse. For me, I think my muse would have to be the landscape itself, and I say that because the whole entire process of when I first paint something, I think I'm seduced by the light, by the colours, but the landscape is a constant, and that's what I'm drawn to, whether that be a seascape or a landscape. And I absolutely think that, the landscape is my muse.
I would say that from a photography perspective, it will depend on what I'm enjoying capturing at that time. So I have gone through seasons where I've really loved capturing houses. I always love capturing houses, specific types of houses even. So like it might be a period home, it might even be sometimes a more modern home, can really excite me and inspire me. But then when it comes to things like brand photography, I might work through capturing different types of brands and feel more inspired by certain aesthetics. So I generally go through a season of capturing a particular type of brand, and then I sort of get to the end of it, kind of like I did, at the end of last year, where I'd spent a couple of years capturing a particular style of brand and type of brand, and then I was ready to move back into, some other sort of slightly more interiors related ones. So I think it all depends on where you're going creatively as well, in terms of what is your muse and what inspires you. And obviously you can find inspiration on platforms like Pinterest. Quite often I'll come across things that will give me lots of new ideas or new ways of seeing things, but specifically brands, like a brand that I've really loved observing and watching their content for is, I think it's Olive Atelier in Los Angeles, which you put me onto.
Yeah.
I really love their campaigns, I love their content, I love the look and feel of it. So that's probably one of my muses at the moment. I think generally speaking, as far as just being a creative and finding inspiration, that we have so many different places to be stimulated and inspired, that I just don't believe that there's generally one fixed muse anymore, like there might have been 200 years ago when someone painted.
Do you think that's partly sort of ADHD?
That's probably.
I don't know.
It's a family thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but I certainly think that we.
There's not just one person. Like obviously, I love Horvath to bits, but Horvath doesn't inspire all of the work that I do. So I think you're right in the sense that I think it can often be one specific person if you're into something really specific like portraiture, and whether that is painting or even photography. I know that a lot of photographers who endlessly photograph the same person. We're not really that.
I often think that that a muse is often attached to. Oh, that's got a bit of
gunk.
Yeah, gunk. I often think that a muse is attached to obsession in some ways, and
trying to satisfy that obsession.
Yeah, well, if you think about, a French Impressionist artist or Picasso, and he had several muses, I think, in his lifetime. I think he was a bit of a, bit of a, well,
he was an artiste.
He was an artiste.
Who had a love for the human form,
the female form. The female form. But, I sort of look at Picasso as, obviously a master, but he was obsessed with certain individuals. So we've got one more final thing today. Last week we trialled doing a bit of a tarot reading, and we had some really positive response. Everyone's really open to it, but we've had a bit of a chat, and we're going to do it on a separate YouTube channel. We just think it's going to mix up too much, don't we?
Yes, and that is our multi-creative nature to obviously do, multiple different things, but I think we always recognise when we need to segment those creative things so there's not confusion.
So we're hoping that if you're interested in tarot, we're going to start that channel very soon. We're going to start filming this week, and it'll be a hands only. We won't be putting our faces up here. You'll only have our faces on this channel. But really looking forward to it. So you never know. We're going to work together, do one reading each a week, and do a joint reading. So there'll be 3 readings a week, which will be great. So looking forward to introducing that to you.
We'll link it in the description below.
Yeah. But until next week. Bye from the studios, Jane.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.